Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and this podcast is dedicated to helping families love God and use tech. Today, we are continuing our summer tech conversation. Last time, we talked about how do we keep tech purposeful over the summer, and we talked about purposeful tech and using it out of hope, not fear. Today, we are going to continue that summer tech focus, but we're going to be talking a little bit more about how do we make summer fun again. In a world of technology, when technology can be so overwhelming, how do we continue to make tech accessible and safe? Certainly, that was our first conversation. And make summer fun even if tech isn't the center of it. Now, I do need to explain for those of you who are watching on YouTube, one, my format is weird today, and two, my location is different. You are hearing me from Command Center Toyota, by which I mean my family's Highlander. So we are, as has been mentioned in a previous episode, we've moved. We're not yet settled in the new location, and we're still in Washington State. It's amazing. We are happy to be here, but man, I had to get creative. We're like in between locations, in between some family stuff. We've got book launches in just a couple weeks here, and that meant that I get to record from the family car. So let me know about the acoustics, about this new mic. What this sounds like. And thanks to the people over at Krista Ministries and the Purposely Podcast Network, I'm sure the audio will be incredible because they are talented, motivated human beings who can make even Nathan recording in his own vehicle sound all right. So thank you all for making this happen. And thank you for listening and for being patient with this process. I didn't want to not do one, but here we go. Today's conversation, we talk about, so the bigger conversation is the 5 tech fixes. I don't actually think I said that last episode because I was trying to be a little more coy with it and be like, oh, I'll just like sneak them into a bigger conversation about summer tech. But really, this is the 5 tech fixes. And the idea behind the 5 tech fixes is what do we do with our technology when we realize there's a problem? So if our first conversation is, how do we just start talking about healthy tech, about smartphones, video games, pornography? If the next conversation is, how do we make our tech safe? Like, how do we know the 2 types of tech? There's tool and drool. And how do we assess if it's healthy using a reset? And how do we build hedges? Like, those are great. The next conversation is, all right, so we know all that and we've applied it and we're having the conversations and we know some of it is problematic. What do we do next? Like, how do I take unhealthy tech and make it healthy? Those are the 5 tech fixes. And I thought about fighting the term fixes because I don't love the language, but it communicates very quickly. And this is literally what you do to fix the problem. Like, there are practical spiritual disciplines you apply to know and trust the Lord better. To use Dallas Willard's phrase, there are things we can do by repeated choices that we can't do by willpower alone. Like, I want to love God more. You can't just choose to love God more. You have to actually practice loving God more. By loving others, by repenting and confessing, by reading His Word, by putting Scripture in our hearts, by being part of a loving community, by going to a church that preaches the Bible. These are things we can do that make us love God more. Similarly, with technology, there are things you can do. Yes, loving God is the core problem. I use my tech wrong because I don't trust God right, or rightly. So how do I fix that? Well, there are things to do. And that's the 5 fixes. So the first 2 is we use tech on purpose. We use it intentionally and deliberately. And so last time I talked about checking, is it safe? Is it a good fit for your kid? And is it a good fit for the season, right? So we discussed that. And by this season, I said, is it producing good fruit? Galatians 5:19 through 23. Then we talked about using it on hope, not fear. And that conversation was really focused on, well, I mean, it's hope, not fear. So do we use this tech purposefully? So rather than just using it or avoiding it because we're scared of it, going, hey, this isn't a good fit for you because A, B, or C, because it doesn't fit our family's expectations, because it's designed to harm you and not help you. So we're going to redirect your attention to this other thing. We're going to remove that one, replace it with this one. So that was last week's conversation. This week's conversation is, all right, how do we make summer fun again if tech isn't going to be the center part. If we've realized, you know what, this tech is great and we need to keep it in its proper place, as Andy Crouch is so fond of saying in his book, The Tech-Wise Family, and I love that phrase. Let's use tech, but let's keep it in its proper place. Let's not let it creep into all aspects of our life. Let's not let it creep into all locations of our homes. Let's keep it where it's going to be useful and go about the rest of our lives. So summer adventures, we want to make them happen. How does that work? Today, we're going to talk twofold, analog adventures and beneficial stress. This is huge, and I'm going to try to keep it concise. But the initial part of having fun in the summer is to remember that life can be fun. If your child has shown to be unhealthy in a reset, this is especially important, but it's applicable to any child and to adults as well, to remember how to have fun at the pace of real life, to have fun without digital distractions creeping into the point where that becomes our standard for excitement. I actually heard this so I listen to the radio. I don't usually listen to the radio. Typically, it's going to be audiobooks or I ride in the silence. But this week, with technology all over the place and being in a different spot than I'm used to, and I burned through the books on audio, so I listened to the radio for the first time in a long time. Actually, at one point, I didn't even have my phone on me. I was like, oh, listen to the radio. Talk radio is always interesting to me for a number of reasons. But in this case, there was a younger man who's running a show, and partway through, he shares, not related to the topics they were discussing, like, oh, I'm addicted to video games. He's like, they're just so exciting. I can't help but like turn my whole life into like getting back to my games. And he shares how he's like, I understand that my skills aren't transferable. He's like, here's the game I'm good at. I play it all the time. But like, I can't bring that into my professional life or into like, when I'm dating someone, like that's not a conversation starter. Like he goes on this whole piece. I was like, oh, that's super interesting to hear someone who's in their late 20s, clearly a successful professional, and yet would describe himself as a gaming addict because of the impact he's seen on his own life and his own motivations beyond his professional career into what he finds joy in on the daily and how real life isn't exciting. Like that's what we're looking for when we talk about our children. Like, do you find real life exciting still? And if not, what can we do? And if you do, that's great. What can we do? So analog adventures is our first piece. When we talk analog adventures, I've described it in several other episodes, but I really like Jonathan Haidt's definition of real life experiences and what the real world is. He has 4 things that the real world has to be. This comes from his book, The Anxious Generation. He says the real world needs to be embodied, meaning if it's a real world experience, it needs to happen in your body with someone else's body. This means you have real world risk tied right in, because if it's a conversation, you can risk flopping. If it's an activity, you can risk injury. You can risk being left out. You can risk making a mistake. And these are all happening in real time, and there's no reset button. It's an embodied experience that makes it real world. The second thing is it has to be synchronous. Synchronous means it has to be real world that's happening at the same time as someone else. It doesn't mean asynchronous is bad. This conversation is asynchronous. I'm having it. You're going to listen to it whenever you get around to it. You might even listen to it in chunks. Cool. But real world experiences, analog adventures specifically for today's conversation, have to happen with other people, their actual real life physical mortal bodies, and it has to happen at the same time. They have to be with you, present. Yes, Zoom can happen as a synchronous opportunity, but it's not embodied. But it is synchronous. You're talking to an individual and it's happening at the same time. They're giving you real world facial expressions and they're laughing at real world jokes and they're reacting to conversation and there's a back and forth there. So it needs to be embodied. It needs to be synchronous. It needs to be one-to-one or one-to-several. And the premise of that is, so if we were talking, let's say we went out to coffee and now we're embodied and it's synchronous, it's also going to be a fairly small-ish group. So there's going to be maybe 4 of us. 4 is a big group for coffee, maybe 5, but like you're pushing it. As soon as you get to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people, you break into smaller conversations. There's 10 of you in the group, but you talk to the people around you and across from you, right? Like you don't talk to a group of 10. That's now a presentation, and that's not a conversation. And that's important to note that does change one-to-one or one-to-several. And that 10 isn't your limit, but I'm just saying for coffee, that would be our limit at probably 5-ish. You can certainly have real-world engagement with dozens of people. You can certainly have real-world presentations to hundreds. I've done it, and it's great. And people can raise their hands, even in groups that are 500-600 people. You can get real-world interactions, even facial expressions. Yes, by the way, presenters can see your face when you're in the audience, even in the back row. So just heads up, I can tell when you're bored. And that's motivating to me. I always want to make it better. So I can also tell when it works, and that's beautiful, and it's real world, so it's embodied, synchronous, one-to-one, or one to several. And then finally, real world experiences, in this case, analog adventures, need to have a high barrier to entry. And by that, we just mean the relational point in terms of adventure. High barrier to entry means a real world relationship costs you something. If you make a friend mad, you have a motivation to fix it other than just you care about this person. That's part of the cost. There's an emotional cost to being in a relationship with people, so that's real. And there's also a high cost to the social aspect of, like, that person's going to walk away, and there's now going to be a cost to having offended that individual, both with that person and the relationship that costs there, meaning they might not want to speak to you, or they might treat you differently, or they might be less on board with your future ideas. But then there's a cost of that person belonging to a society. And I'm not even talking about slander or any of the bad gossipy pieces, just the fact that that person being withdrawn from you affects the other people you might be friends with. Like, you go to hang out with that person, like, oh man, like, this relationship isn't the same anymore because that relationship isn't the same. Like, we are interconnected. There's a high barrier to entry. You can't simply unplug and plug into a new relationship, and now you start with a full head of steam at no cost, and there's no side consequences to your behavior or actions. In the real world, it all is connected and it matters. Like, the fact that I've lived in a town for a number of years, the same town that I taught in and the same town that I grew up in, that matters because people know me even if they don't know what I'm doing today, even if they don't know exactly what happened yesterday. Like, there is this continuity to relationship. That doesn't mean moving's bad or that changing scenes is bad. It means that in a real world, you moving to a new town means you have to meet new people and you have to build rapport and ethos with them. And you don't get the full head of steam that you had with an older set of friends or people that have known you for a long time. And that's true in any real world experience, in athletics, in business, in relationships, in family. You have all these aspects. So for analog adventure, according to Haidt, and this is the example or the definition that I really like, real world adventures are going to be embodied. They're going to be synchronous. They're going to be one-to-one or one to several. So you're not getting lost in a crowd. You can't hide in a back wall. You can't just sit it out and pretend like you participated. And they're going to have a high barrier to entry. So what does that look like for our families? It can be simple. You can take 15-minute analog adventures, 1 hour analog adventures, half day, full day, multi-day. It can scale. But you can start simple things. I like to think of just in terms of tag. You can play a simple game of tag for 10 minutes in your backyard or front yard, in your living room with just your kids and family. And that is an analog adventure that can be a break away from, hey, instead of us watching a show right now, we're going to go play a game of tag. You can grab the neighbor kids. Guess what? Now we're being relational and communal. There are hundreds of types of tag. My kids personally like regular good old-fashioned tag, amoeba tag, where you tag someone, you got to join up with them. Now there's 2 of you. They like sharks and minnow tag, so that you got to run back and forth across like a field or a court or a room. And the sharks are in the middle and the minnows are trying to get across, last one standing. But you're safe once you reach the far side. So it's like it's waves, right? It's very video gamey. They like the idea of like there's a time when that can be tagged and there's a time it can't be. They love freeze tag, all the types of freeze tag where you can do like toilet tag where someone has to sit with one knee and their arm out and you have to sit and flush their hand to unfreeze them. So it's not just tag 10 people. There's some chance to be here. Tunnel tag where you got to crawl underneath their legs for freeze tag. They love them all, but their personal favorite is, in fact, battle tag. Battle Club was something we did in Young Life because we thought it'd be funny. It was actually kind of a bet where a bunch of our female leaders were like, you guys wouldn't really do that. You wouldn't LARP with a bunch of junior high kids because they would laugh you out of house and home. And we took them up on that bet. And it was one of our 2 greatest events. The other one was a Mario Kart tournament. Yes, a guy who doesn't play video games hosted 5 years worth of Mario Kart tournaments, but neither here nor there. We also did a Smash Brothers tournament, actually. It was incredible. But neither here nor there. Battle Club, because we're analog adventuring today, is incredible. It's tag with swords. And if they're not actually in this car. They were literally in my car. I was driving around with LARPing equipment. The reason I'm a big fan of this is manifold, but manifold. going to go with that. Sorry if my vocab is off today. But the idea behind it is you use some kind of foam weaponry. We use equipment that we bought from a local here in Washington State out of Lakewood, Washington. The Game Matrix sells this stuff in their store. But you can buy it online. I don't even remember maybe I'll post in the notes what the company is if you wanted to buy direct. But it's not inexpensive for this stuff, but basically it's safe, it's resilient, and it's stuff that can be used at a wide range of ages. It allows you to run, it allows you to interact, but you don't have to be the most athletic. You don't have to be the tallest or the biggest or the strongest or the fastest. Whereas normal tag, like there's certain kids, we just get out a lot and they know we're going to get out, so they pick on us. And we spend a lot of our time either as the tagger, which the problem with tag is like, if you're not the quickest and you get tagged, then how are you going to catch anybody else, right? Like the recess bell rings and then everyone runs inside. But the cool part about this is you might not be the best at any particular thing, but you have a sword or a spear or a shield. Like you can protect yourself. You can team up with others because you're all tagging other people and you can go 2 teams against each other, every man for himself. You can play elimination tag. You can play all sorts of scenarios, which we are partial to doing lots of scenarios. But what do we call it? King and queen tag, where each team has a leader. So you don't have to eliminate the team. You just have to get that one person. Like that adds a cool strategy to it. Lots of scenarios that we like to do. But in using this equipment, the kids get exercise. They get teamwork. They get the frustration of losing, but they also get a fighting chance literally because it doesn't come down to raw basic abilities. It comes down to some teamwork and it scales beautifully. So my 5-year-old daughter plays it. We just get her an itty bitty little sword. My 8 and 10-year-olds enjoy it. The neighbor 8 and 10-year-olds enjoyed it. And we actually borrowed some for the 4th of July. We borrowed some equipment because we're like, you know what? 4th of July out here in southern Alaska, it doesn't get dark until 9 p.m. And that's when it starts getting dark. Like it's not actually dark till 10. Well, what does a kid do when he wakes up? This is his favorite day, better than Christmas. Yes, my eldest loves himself some 4th of July. But you can't do fireworks till nighttime. And in Washington State, Western Washington, we can actually do fireworks. So we're sitting around. Well, we don't just want them to like sit in front of a screen until it's night. So we borrowed some extra equipment from friends who have extra equipment. And we let the kids go nuts, go in the cul-de-sac, use the backyard, use the neighbor's yard. And they ran around. It was hot that day, but they had a great time. It wasn't the only thing they did. Other forms of tag, laser tag, airsoft, paintball, all of those are great. I have found Battle Club to be a beautiful mix of genuine just tag and a little bit of combat built in, but it's not strictly built around the best equipment or, the best tactics. And it can scale all the way up to adults. If you like pulling hammies, go get it. I've yet to have an adult who shows up for one of these. And I say one of these, so at Young Life, young adults would be in, but also my son's birthdays. They love to do these and invite friends over. And we get parents involved. And I've yet to find a parent who plays one full round that doesn't go, oh, I'm going to do better next time. Like nothing like getting tagged by a 6-year-old makes you think, I need to step up my game and try a little harder next time. So I strongly recommend any kind of simple activity with your family. I used tag because we've seen it work in our family and in families around us and in community and with adults and with kids, and it scales well. But it's simple and it's safe enough. There's certainly some risk. Can someone get hit in the eye? They can. Yeah, it's happened before. Never a devastating hit. We've had lots of little scrapes and scuffs, and people trip. Honestly, when we play on asphalt, like tripping is your biggest danger. You're going to catch a toe and, get a good old fashioned raspberry. But that is part of the process of playing a game of tag. So other adventures can include things as simple as reading a book together, playing a game together, going on a family walk, certainly doing like an organized sport, but I'm thinking analog adventures are more of like the free play version. You can go to a park, to a water park, to a lake, to a local pool. These are all analog adventures. You can do them together. And in the process, you can be building some risk and responsibility, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So that's one side. You can also go the more analog or the organized version of analog adventures. So our kids this last week have done a local sports camp where they go and they show up for 90 minutes and they do this. You can build your risk and responsibility into that. I keep stealing my own thunder on that. I'll get back to those words. Or Our oldest just started, he's finishing today, but this is his first ever overnight camp. I don't know how you feel about overnight camps. Ours, just to make sure that this is not like pressuring you into doing them, ours is vetted, so it's one that Ann and I have both done when we were young, that we are very partial to. We actually met at this camp. We know the people that run the camp now because they went there when we went there, and they've continued going there. It's sport specific. Owen loves basketball, and he wants to be better at basketball, and this is a basketball camp. And we know his roommates. So they're kids from school that we teamed up with that he is staying with, and there were 2 other kids in there, and we know their families. So we chose to let Owen do an overnight camp this year. That's a huge deal. It's a big expense. It's a big chunk out of the family time, and your family can't go anywhere when this child is at camp. Like, you're committing to something. And yet, it's an amazing way to help your child experience fun at the pace of real life. It doesn't have to be a sport-specific camp. You can go to one of there are adventure camps where they focus on hiking or dirt biking or riding horses or whatever it might be. But for your child, whatever would be a good fit in terms of their passions and their interests and their abilities, I strongly recommend finding an organized activity to go to, certainly, and finding ways for your families to enjoy activities together. I don't remember if I had even mentioned hikes, but there's always going to be a walk or a hike wherever you live here in the United States. We have been blessed by people who, even if they don't fear God, appreciate and are in awe of creation. And there are spaces reserved for that, where you can go to and appreciate state parks, national parks, and then local paths and hikes. All Trails is an app. If you have no idea where to start, download the All Trails app or go to their website. They're not a sponsor. They're just a great resource. And you can find local hikes, local reviews. There's some of that through like Google, but I found that gets a little bit flooded by just kind of random voices that maybe don't line up with what I'm expecting. And it's hard to read. Like, is this actually a good hike? Or was this just like a bunch of people that thought it was interesting, but it wouldn't be interesting to me? I found All Trails consistently gives you information that you can use. Kind of like the, oh my goodness, I'm not going to remember the travel website that I like to use when I do my TripAdvisor. It's like TripAdvisor, but for trails, where I have yet to find like a 5-star trail that wasn't actually awesome, or go on a, if they say it's a 3 or 4-star, to explain like, actually, that'd be great for my family. Like, it's too short, like perfect. It's too flat, phenomenal. Like, this is all stuff that I wanted to know. So check them out. Do read the reviews, because some of the 5 stars, like 5-star, it's the best 10,000 feet of elevation we've ever gained. Be like, all right, maybe not a good fit for a Saturday morning with my kids. But yeah, so those are the analog adventure ideas to get out. And rather than giving you those specific ideas, my hope was to talk through something simple like tag and how it can expand from a little 10, 15-minute activity to an hour you do with the neighbors, to an afternoon that you plan, to a full day extravaganza that involves meals and families and a lot of creativity with your twist on it and with whatever you want to emphasize for that. It can be part of something else you're doing, or it can, like, we're going to go to the lake and tag is going to be an hour of that. Or you can just do it as a standalone. So that's why I focused on tag, and I hope in not going into lots of other ideas in depth, it can stir up some cool ideas like, oh man, tag sounds dumb, but we would love to do this thing with our family. We would love to invite families in and do this sort of activity together. So what I want to end on, and I had said this so many times, but I didn't want to skip it, is that there is going to be in this the idea of threefold. This aspect of analog adventures ties in with the other aspect of beneficial stress. Another Jonathan Haidt idea, but when applied to our summers, makes so much sense and makes planning and brainstorming new ideas, it makes it kind of a no-duh. It makes it an obvious no-duh. Do people still say that? I feel like that came from the 90s. It makes it logical and sequential so that we're not constantly thinking about like, well, is someone else doing something? But the FOMO on planning a cool summer idea is real. So what you can do is, with beneficial stress, you're looking for activities that, yes, happen in the real world. So they're embodied and synchronous and one-to-one or one-to-several and have a high barrier to entry. And you are looking for things that include risk, responsibility, and free play. So risk is going to mean when you participate in this, you are putting something on the line. Just having it be real world means you are risking physical investment and exertion and potential harm. That's true if you water ski. That's true if you go swimming. That's true if you use water balloons. Like, something could go wrong. It always can. It doesn't mean we would never do it. It simply means that if it goes wrong, we understand that that's part of what we're getting into in participating in the real world. It's so important for us to put ourselves on the line relationally, in eye-to-eye conversation, physically to figure out our own limits and boundaries, and emotionally to experience the stress of striving and trying and exerting and watching ourselves grow. That was something in watching Owen, my oldest, go to basketball camp. They had this thing called intensity night. So he's there Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday night, parents show up and it is hot. It's 96. They're inside a building. It is 100 plus. They do an hour of circuit work and it's incredible. And Owen and his group, so there's kids 10 to 18 here. And then they've got D1 through D3 basketball players. They've got adult coaches that are all part of this, and they're all running around doing these circuits and sweating, just working. And afterwards, like, what'd you think, guys? Was it fun? And he and his buddy, who were in the same group, were like, well, it wasn't like fun, but I'm proud that I could do it. Right? It was hard. And I was like, yeah, that's what we call type 2 fun. And thanks, Uncle Doug. Type 2 fun. It's the type of fun that's fun when it's over. And you're proud that you were able to do it, and it shows you what you're capable of in the future. And that's one of the major bonuses in my mind of what sports are actually about. Certainly fitness, certainly focus, certainly they're fun. But learning your limits and learning how far you can push yourself and seeing yourself grow with practice and repeated effort, incredible. Like, the application to family and to work and to spiritual development is amazing. And that's a huge benefit of sports. And that's one of the big things I like about beneficial stress and that idea of thinking about the adventures we make. Let's make sure there's some risk, because then it builds responsibility. When you realize that you're capable of taking certain risks, you also are capable of following through on certain responsibilities. Like, certainly this is house chores and family stuff, but adventures can teach responsibility because they scale. Like, hey, first adventure is we're going to go on a family walk. Second adventure is you can do that walk on your own. Third adventure is you can bring a friend and you can go to another location. You can go to a friend's house. You can go to a park. You can go do that hike. You can build on these levels and scaling of responsibilities because you've taken these risks in the past. Can someone get hurt doing that? Yes, absolutely. Is it your job as a parent to make sure your child never gets hurt? No. It's simply to manage the level of risk. Please don't send your child out when they have no idea how to fend for themselves. They have no idea of the relational, physical risks that they're about to take in crossing streets or talking to strangers or being in public. Like, don't just throw your child into the wild. But you've seen a level of growing responsibility. You assess that this interest your child has matches what they're ready for, then go for it. And then Owen loves basketball. We know this camp really well. We know individuals at the camp, and he's going with friends that we know and trust and that he has experience with. Therefore, you can go and do this activity. It's going to be hard. It's going to be overnight, which we realize there's not a lot of opportunities to scale up to overnight. Like, Owen hasn't stayed lots of places by himself before. This is his first overnight experience, and he's done it. And yes, he was bummed. We did get a camp call. Like, it happened, and we didn't go get him because he wasn't in any risk of harm. He just needed a chance to know, like, we still exist even when you're not with us, and we still love you, and we're not coming to get you. So whatever your family chooses to do. By the way, Loving Families did the day camping thing. One of his best buddies is a day camper this year. That's absolutely a step in responsibility and risk. So he goes home each night, he comes back to camp, and he's already said, like, next year, Mom and Dad, I want to stay overnight. Great. That's cool. The point isn't get your kid out somewhere overnight. The point is analog adventures are an amazing way to help your child grow and use the summer free time for character development and personal growth, and to add some risk and responsibility to the fun they have. Like, you like basketball. We know that. What about a camp? And maybe it's a day camp. Maybe it's just an hour, but maybe it's overnight. And so risk, responsibility, and free play. No, camp does not count as free play as an organizational structure, but it can count as free play when it comes to the time they have that isn't structured. The free play I'm thinking about is mainly how do you get your kid in the front yard or the backyard? How do you bring friends over? Trampolines are amazing for this if you're comfortable with them on a risk side. They're a calculated risk that we choose to take. On the regular, we are bringing one into our new house. We left the one for the other family because they really wanted it. So that's great. Please think about whatever the activity might be for your family. because at the end of the day, when we talk about making summer fun, it's about having to be real world and about taking intentional risks and building real world responsibilities so that we can grow as individuals and we can learn our own limits and boundaries. The real plus here on the analog adventure side is that it recalibrates what we think is fun. So video games, like that radio person was saying, like, oh, video games are my base level for fun. They're what I have to do to feel excited and energized. That isn't true with analog adventures. When you start to realize, oh, you know what, I can have fun just playing tag with my friends. Video games are still cool. But this, like, you're not going to get overstimulated playing tag. You're not going to get overstimulated at basketball camp because you can't move faster than your own body and mind can move. Those are really valuable skills and lessons for us to take into the real world. So how do we make summer fun? We get real world experiences, whatever those might be for your family, what I like to call analog adventures that are embodied, they're synchronous, they're one-to-one or one-to-several, they're a group of real-world people we're participating with, and there's a high barrier to entry. There's a cost to us being here because we're going to involve beneficial stress that makes us stronger, doesn't break us down, that involves risk, responsibility, and free play, and the ability to make your own decisions. So for older kids, this would look like we're going to go to a location, we're going to enjoy ourselves, and make our own decisions while we're there. Be that a park, be that a hike, be that a friend's house. So I hope this is encouraging. I hope you've thought of some ideas you can do with your family. I would love to hear your ideas. If you want to share them with us, at Love God Use Tech on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You can send me a note, nathan@gospeltech.net. Would love to get your emails and hear about how you're dreaming up summer plans and what that looks like. And would you, as we look to the next couple of weeks, we have a book, 2 books actually coming out. August 13th, Gospel-Centered Tech, the book that I wrote, is coming out, and Anna's book, The Graceful Disconnect. Oh no, I almost messed it up. The Graceful Disconnect, which is a 25-day devotional talking to families, but specifically to moms, about how do we focus our hearts on the Lord and then raise up kids well in a tech world. They're coming out August 13th, and we are so excited for families to get these resources so that you can be equipped and empowered to talk about tech and to communicate the gospel and then to apply the hope of the gospel to your daily tech life. So look for those. You can go to gospelcenteredtech.com to check it out, and then you can join us next week as we continue this conversation about how we can love God and use tech.